My name is Jordan, and welcome to Call Your Hits, a Storm Riders Airsoft podcast.
Thanks for joining us, everyone, and thanks for being our guest, Jordan. As you heard, Jordan is here. He's a longtime friend of the show, one of our Discord mods, and one of my good buddies. Jordan has been on the show several times in the past, and he's as some of our avid listeners might remember, some of our very early episodes with him, he had literally just started playing Airsoft. And so fast forward almost 4 years now, and he's routinely posting on the Discord about all his advanced gear and night vision setups and all kinds of terrible financial decisions and all points in between. But we were having a conversation the other day, and what's interesting is that, of course, Airsoft has changed significantly for him in the intervening period of starting and where we are today. And if you, as the listener, think about your time playing Airsoft, quite likely that will be true for you too. And actually, Pat and I have talked about the same thing on the podcast. Airsoft today for us is not quite the same thing as it was, when we started back in 2006, like 19 years on, right?
And we have this cool sort of opportunity here where, like when Jordan started, it was like, all right, new guy getting into the sport, getting into the hobby, and coming to us for advice. And now it's like, all right, what weird, crazy things is Jordan doing today?
Yeah, or we're going to him for advice on different things that he's trying too.
Totally,
right?
Yeah. And so it has that sort of the time you've spent doing Airsoft doesn't necessarily matter in terms of your ability to contribute to like cool conversations about this mad thing we do.
Yeah, exactly. And I think too, like when you start playing, like things that were maybe concerns or things that you were worried about when you were playing probably are just a footnote for you now. Maybe you used to worry about offside shooting, you don't worry about that at all now, or you were really worried about very specific things about your gear setup that now you're just like, meh, whatever. Maybe you were really focused on like individual skills and like getting kills at games, and now it's teamwork, like whatever it is. And what Airsoft is and what you look for in Airsoft and what it brings to you will almost certainly change over time, because you as a person are also changing, right? None of us are exactly the same people we were, 5 years ago or 10 years ago or what have you. And so as a consequence of that, it's possible that what you get out of Airsoft may change as well. So today I thought Pat, Jordan, and I would spend a bit of time reflecting on what Airsoft is for us today. Like, why do we actually care about Airsoft? Like, why do we go out and do it? And sort of look back as well on how has that changed over the years and sort of all points in between. So, gents, thanks for being here to have this crazy conversation.
Sounds like
Thanks
fun
for having us.
So I guess I want to start with you, Jordan. Like, what you're doing today with Airsoft seems so different than when we started chatting, back in whatever, like April or May 2021.
It is 100% completely different. I mean, when I came into the, Airsoft itself, it was right after COVID. I think we were like a year into COVID or something.
Yeah,
COVID started in like 2020. And I had gotten hyped up from a bunch of Airsoft Alphons and like Dutch the Hooligan videos on YouTube because I had nothing else to do because we were stuck at home, right? Mm-hmm. And I saw that and I was like, oh my God, you could dress up and play cool. Like I always thought of Airsoft only as plastic clear springers. That was like all the exposure I had ever had to Airsoft growing up. And I didn't even have them myself. I just knew of friends that had them. So when I saw people like actually dressed up in gear, playing in cool places, like the one that brings me back when I watched it was like playing inside of an abandoned mall, and watching like the point of view and footage. I was like, wow, this is like the coolest thing I've ever seen. It's like you're playing video games in real life, which I still feel is the same way. And it just, I needed to experience it. So I came to you guys, I just got my gear. I did 1 million ready ups, as the legend says. Yeah. And, I went out there and I got my ass kicked for a while until I kind of got used to what the game was. And, I was pretty out of shape back then. Cardio really wasn't there. I had not really been active in quite a while, and I was working, from home. So it was not a lot of like getting out and, exercising. So it was tough.
Yeah, the COVID times were low exercise times.
It was really tough. Yeah. It was, as somebody who wasn't really playing sports, at the time, because I stopped playing sports like after high school, and I wasn't really doing like a lot of outdoor activities outside of some hiking. It wasn't regular, so getting out and doing like high intensity stuff, sprinting and crouching and crawling and all that stuff was like a lot for me. And not to say that it isn't now, but it's different. I've been doing it for a while. It's less about, for me now, just getting out and like playing the video game, as it is, turned into more of the experience itself. And it's just completely different. Everything was high speed when I first started. I wanted to look cool. That was like number one. Do I look cool? That is like the whole point of why I wanted to.
I mean, like, Airsoft is a fashion show, right?
Yeah. But he didn't know that at the time.
No. Well, I had the idea, right? Like I saw it and I'm like, well, I want to dress up. So of course I went out and got multicam. And you guys remember I had like a high cut helmet with, cover on it. Like I had a plate carrier setup that I got out of like watching a movie that I really liked, which actually it was a good plate carrier setup. And all of it was, do I look cool? And am I doing like things well enough to feel cool? That was like the main thing, like feeling like I was playing a video game. And it's just different now.
Getting your action hero on, right?
Pretty much. Just to get destroyed by 12-year-olds with like, really bad rental guns and people that are outrunning me because, they actually run and play like running sports. So
did you, I mean, it's hard to like put yourself back to where you were. And I think the same thing, I mean, ask Pat the same thing in a second, is going to be especially hard for him because it's almost 2 decades on now. But like, what were you thinking was going to be fun about Airsoft at that time? Like, what were you like, oh man, I can't wait to do? Like, I mean, you talk about looking cool, but like with Airsoft specifically, what was the fun for you?
Honestly, when I first started, like the competition of it and feeling like I was performing well, making cool plays, like doing cool moves, like being able to, say like, oh yeah, I just cleared that room of like three people, like all by myself, and wipe the team like from like a flank, was like what I was focused on. I was focused on the shooting and getting shot of what Airsoft is. That was like the whole thing for me. And I never was like a person that, and I still think it's kind of weird, and people might not like this, but I've never been the person that's like, man, my KD ratio today. Like some people will actively keep track in their head. That's like part of the game for them. Like, well, I'm at like 7 KD. Last round I had 7 people and I got shot once. Like I've never been the guy to count that, and I've always kind of thought that was a little bit cringe in my opinion, because I never played to do that. But there was absolutely a performance aspect to the game that was what originally drew me in. Was I'm going to feel like I'm playing a video game where it's like you go on a kill streak and you have a bunch of kills and you feel like you're doing a bunch of cool stuff the whole time.
And like that, the videos that you referenced that you were watching at the time are that kind of content too, right? Like there's lots of Airsoft content that's geared towards like giving that vibe.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I would say the great majority of Airsoft content is that. It's high speed, high action. It's montage based. They show you clips of when they did really well, not when they didn't do so well. It's all like, look at how great I just did. Whereas
we really need to get me a GoPro so that people can just watch me get shot in the face for.
Yeah, like... that's like the reality. I've thought about that before. Lane, so Scum on the Discord made this mount for a camera that puts it like in point of view. So like when you aim down sight, you can like see through the optic. I'm like, damn, that would be like really cool to have, like and then edit my own videos. But at the same time, it's like, that's another thing of balance, like having to put that thing on your gear, having to make sure it's maintained, like carrying extra batteries and stuff, like all things that I don't think are fun about Airsoft now, that I don't want to incorporate into my routine about what Airsoft is.
That's a really cool idea. Wait.
Yes.
So Pat, what about for you? Like, especially initially, like I know it's a long time ago, but like, what was the fun for you?
I mean, a million years ago, like, my very first game, the appeal was like, Phil wants to hang out and do something, and I have time and like hanging out with Phil, right? Like getting past the initial, like, all right, this is Pat's first game of Airsoft, and Pat does not know how to remove a mag from a scar. It very quickly became like, a thing that combined, like, I like hiking, I like going out in the woods, and the place we were playing was really quite nice. So like it there was a little bit of like quiet time on the way in, quiet time on the way out with like friends and positivity. And just, very much initially the, cops and robbers, like, pew pew. Right? Like,
Mm-hmm.
do you want to run around in the woods and shoot toy guns at one? Yeah, sounds like fun. And pretty quickly for us, it was, like trying to do the matching kit and the sort of like black sweater, Cyraz days, which was also like, oh yeah, like we match, we feel like badasses. And it was very, like very different for me. Very, in some ways, sort of, I guess, yeah. Would Airsoft have been? No, we were doing kendo already. So like, I joke a lot that I didn't do any sports when I was in high school, and that the reason isn't that I don't like sports. I just exclusively like sports where I get to fight people in some way.
Mm-hmm.
Combat sports have like a different feeling to them.
Yeah,
Definitely.
and
Like paintball, like it's just a different appeal,
Yeah, and
like it's a real versus, right? Like it's you
Yes.
versus the other person. Yeah, and somehow it's different, right? It's not the same as like, well, it's tennis 1-on-1. It's like, yeah, but it's not.
Yeah,
it's not the same thing. I'm not trying to kill the other guy, right?
I'm a very, like, in terms of all of the other like ways I've ever played games, I'm a very social, like, community gamer. So, it helped that we had chill people to play with.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, it was about like trying to develop new skills and doing stuff that I'd never done or tried before, and I like learning stuff. So that's definitely where I started.
Yeah. I thought. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you guys were playing in a pretty not safe place, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. The fact that like every now and then, I talk to a few of the guys and we have a retrospective, and the fact that no one, except for that one injury that Patrick Short on our team experienced, the fact that no one got more seriously hurt than that, which, let's be honest, was a pretty serious injury, but he recovered fully and that's fine. The fact that no one got like seriously injured or maimed or something like that is somewhat close to a miracle. And the fact that we also did not ever have a situation where hikers going through the area got randomly shot by us is also some form of minor miracle.
Yeah.
So, but I think,
that is all luck and no skill.
Yeah. But, at the time, I think, when I think back, like, for me, like, the appeal was very much similar to Jordan. Like, it was like, oh, I want to feel like a badass. Like, this is so cool. But, like, I had this very misplaced idea that this was something that I was naturally good at, right? Because I had been shooting since I was like, I don't know, 13, like shooting pellet guns and then shooting like competition shooting at university and all this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh man, you're a badass at this. You're super good at it. Right. And we started playing Airsoft, and it was a hobby that everyone was on the same playing field at. Right. Because nobody had any experience with it. So I disproportionately felt like I was a total badass at this game. I'm like, man, you rock at this. And in retrospect, I'm like, man, I was horseshit. Like I was so bad. But a lot of the enjoyment for me, at least, was I'm doing this thing that I'm actually semi-competent at. And I can go and do this, and I can compete with other people. And, like if we pull teams, like my name might get drawn first. Right? Like that's pretty cool. And so that was a lot of the appeal for me, especially initially. And then once Pat started, started playing, a little bit later and stuff, then that focus sort of changed a little bit to, okay, well, we're going to do stuff together. We're going to do stuff together. We're going to do stuff together. Now, that didn't happen all the time because our community was so friggin' small. It was very like not possible to roll together all the time, and the area was so large that it just didn't support that. But that was the thought. It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna go be a team. We're gonna go be a team. We're gonna be a team, and then here we are, like 19 years later.
It's really funny that you mentioned like you thought you were gonna be really like good, like you were just naturally good. There are definitely times where when I first started playing, I would like make a move or make a flank or something, and I'd be like, yeah, I feel like the experience that I've had playing like video games that are similar to this, like not like Call of Duty, but more like slower, more tactical games like Escape from Tarkov before it became another Call of Duty, and other like milsim based games. I almost felt like I feel like I've done movements like this before, so I felt like I was, I would see references sometimes. I'd be like, yeah, like I feel like I have an advantage because of that. But the first day I ever played, when I showed up with all my gear, I looked like it was not the first time I had ever played because of the stuff that I had, minus everything being clean. Um, I remember one of the like third games of the day, I walked back dead because we were playing like this attack defend game, and the ref was like, "Man, I've seen you a lot," and because I was like going back to respawn, and I'm like, "Yep," like I just kept
Mm,
dying over and over again.
And I mean, like,
Um,
I feel like every airsofter has had days where they play airsoft and like, man, I'm really good at airsoft, and then also days where they play and they're like, man, I'm complete garbage.
yeah,
I am mostly the second one now. Like a
yeah.
lot of times I'll go play and I'll just be like getting absolutely destroyed. Like three out of four times, like I'll go through a doorway and I'll just get blasted, and I'll just go back to base. And I'm like, man, this is airsoft. I'll tell you, like we're playing the game of airsoft. I don't try to pretend to be good ever. I just try to play the game, and that's kind of like what it is now. Like
Yeah.
I go out there to practice what I've worked on, use new gear and stuff, but I don't go in thinking like I'm better than anybody else. I get creamed just as much as the next guy when some kid comes around with a $150 gun and a sweatshirt and
But
a paintball face mask.
I
Like
mean,
it
it's
Yeah.
doesn't.
like, when we did kendo, one of the best pieces of advice I ever got was like, the minute you are thinking about how you are hot shit and what you're doing looks really good is the minute you've ceased to do anything worthwhile here in terms of developing your skills.
Yeah.
And like, airsoft is great for that because the minute I start like, oh yeah, I feel just I get shot in the face by a 12-year-old with like a Springer, and I'm like, all right, yeah, airsoft.
Yeah, I forgot.
Yeah.
I'm actually not the best. Like,
It's like,
it's funny that you say stuff like that because Phil. I mean, and I think I said this very recently. Somebody on the Discord was like, "You're on a different level. I can't keep up with you." And I'm like, dude, no. Like, it's not the case, man. Like,
Maybe they
yeah,
meant financially. I don't know.
yeah, no. Yeah. Just because I make poor decisions financially doesn't mean maybe you're probably better than me at that. But somebody mentioned something like that, and I'm like, dude, no, I'm not. I don't claim to ever be great at this game. Do I talk about stuff that I know how to do? Like when we talked about LMG gunning and being a support gunner, absolutely, because that's experience that I've had over a few years now at many different events. But I never said that like I don't die or I don't make stupid decisions or I don't just get outplayed all the time. Like
Hmm.
there are people that are much better than me at this game,
I mean,
and
I feel
and
like one of
that's
the
like a
good things.
reality of it.
I feel like one of the things that I like about airsoft is that I can make stupid decisions, and that ultimately 20 minutes later, 10 minutes later, I'm playing again, whatever. Right? Like sometimes I make stupid decisions, knowing they're stupid decisions, but for the fun of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I
Mm-hmm.
think, Jordan, you're talking about something that, especially initially, like, uh, I had, I still sometimes have this pressure of like, well, I have to do well, right? And especially when we were in a smaller community, and I'm like, in my mind, I'm really good at this game, and so I have to do well to convince myself that I'm still good. You know what I mean? Like you get stuck in this sort of cycle. But the reality now, especially having had the opportunity to play elsewhere and all this kind of stuff, is that to your point just now, I'm not better or worse. Well, worse than some people maybe, but like like nobody's better than me, but I'm not better than anybody else. Do you know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's this like we're all on the same playing field. We have good days, we have bad days, whatever. And if you look, you will always, always, always find one person or many people who are more skilled or more apt or more useful in any given situation that you're in. Someone, who does the same thing that you would have done, except they don't get killed and you do. Fine.
Mm-hmm.
That'll happen. And I think one of the big things that's changed for me over the years is sort of getting away from that. To your point, it's like when I show up now, I want to do well, but the what that means is a different metric altogether, right? And
I'm like,
so I guess I wanted to ask you though. So like when you're looking at going to airsoft today, right? What does that mean for you? Like you're having a good day at airsoft. Like what does that look like?
Honestly, now if I'm having a good day at airsoft, I'm just playing airsoft. It doesn't matter if I'm really doing well or not. Like I most of the time I go out, I'm playing CQB in the wintertime right now. Um, which is not super often. Maybe once or twice a month I'll get out to a CQB field because it's about a 2-hour drive for me to go play.
that's dedication.
Um, yeah, it's a lot in the wintertime because it's really cold, and once it starts getting icy, I don't really like playing in that.
Hmm.
I'm apt to fall as it is. Add ice into the situation, and I start breaking things, and hopefully
Yeah,
it's
it's a
just my
sure bet.
guns. Like
Yeah.
hopefully it's just my guns and not other stuff. But honestly, now airsoft for me, a good day of airsoft, any day that I'm there with my friends, and I'm playing with my friends, and there is not some huge drama that goes down at the field. Like, there's not some horrible cheater or like a fight that breaks out, or somebody gets something stolen. Like, any day that's just regular being there with your friends and hanging out with them and playing the game, whether or not you're performing well or not, is a good airsoft day to me. Which is totally different from back in the day, because I used to come home, sometimes I would be like, man, I really suck today, and I'd be like upset about that, like, why did I go out and play? Like, I'm just bad. Like,
Yeah.
and that's how I'd feel sometimes, but it's not like that anymore.
And like, I feel like, you were mentioning earlier the sort of tracking your KDA thing, right? Like, every now and then people regularly people are like, oh, how many kills did you get the game? And I'm like, none.
Or like, I don't know.
Like,
I wasn't counting.
How do you know none? I don't know. Phil and John did it. Like,
Yeah.
What'd you do? I suppressed that corner so that Phil and John could do it. Like, that's what I'm doing. And like, one of the definite evolutions of Airsoft for me is going from that sort of like 2-man team where it was like, all right, well, we're both just sort of trying to, to play effectively.
Stay alive,
and, like,
really.
Yeah, stay alive, play effectively, and like, 6-man, 8-man games, where it's like, well, I guess victory for the Storm Riders will be defined as Phil or Pat is alive at the end. To, having more teammates and like really, like, I'm way more likely to go to a game that like Phil and John and like one of our other guys, like if 3 of our guys are going, oh, yeah, I'm way more likely to get like myself together.
Definitely.
100%. The friends going is half the reason why I even want to go.
You know,
Normally it's like, I'm feeling like playing Airsoft this weekend, and I'll ask if people want to go. If nobody wants to go or they can't,
You'll find
that's
something else to do.
Yeah, like that, half the chances of me going at that point. Like,
Totally.
I go from 50% to like 25% chance, and then I probably don't go.
Yeah, totally. I'm like, it's funny. I think in terms of like how I'm building my kit, or like, what I'm going to work on in terms of gear, like in team effectiveness kind of ways. Like, there's stuff I still carry that's like, yeah, I'm really carrying this in case Phil needs another mag, or John needs a mag or whatever. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. It's just sort of interesting, because I also am like, yeah, if, I get to play with my friends. That doesn't necessarily mean always playing on the same team as the rest of the Storm Riders. Like, but like when I play, team deathmatch games where Phil's on the opposing team, like, I'm as likely to be getting shot by Phil, often in the past by a gun I built, and like the tech aspect of it definitely is still kind of like a like, oh yeah, I got smoked, but like I got smoked by a gun that I made so that it is smoking me.
Yeah, so actually kind of a win at that point.
Like hooray.
Yeah.
That did exactly what I wanted it to. I didn't, but hey, something's working.
Yeah. What about like the game itself though? Like, if you take people out, because I agree. Like, I think if you tell me, hey, we're going to play, do you guys want to play at Frontline on the weekend, and none of the guys are going, I'm not going. I'm going to go for a run or go get groceries or do literally anything else. It's just not happening. But taking that part aside, right? What is it about Airsoft, like the actual game, whether it's in a match or whatever, that you find fun? Like, where are you getting enjoyment in the moment?
I love that question, because I've been thinking about this recently, and I've been talking about it too. When I first started playing Airsoft, the reason I wanted to play Airsoft was to play Airsoft. The act of playing Airsoft. And as I've been playing for a long time and probably progressed through Airsoft and its phases a lot quicker than a lot of people, I've gone through the burnout phase where I don't want to play the game. I've gone through the crazy, I want to play every single weekend, multiple times a week sometimes, when I first started playing, to now I just want to get out and, hang out with my friends. But in that time, the game style that I enjoy has changed. And the reason I want to go play Airsoft has changed. In fact, sometimes I even tell people, and I kind of still believe this, I think that Airsoft, the best thing about Airsoft is actually not even Airsoft. In my opinion, the games that I like now, the reason that I like them is not because I'm playing Airsoft. I like them because of the challenge and the experience that I'm getting as a result that Airsoft can push. So those 40-hour or 36-hour immersive events, you're playing Airsoft, but the experience is not the best because it's Airsoft. The experience is the best because of the challenge that you're in, because of the situations that are presented, and the experience that it gives. So, I used to think like, oh man, people that want to go to reenactments, like war reenactments, or things that people would be like, oh, this is a role playing event. I'd always thought like, man, that's really lame. I'd rather just go play airsoft and shoot at each other. I am like all for those reenactment, like LARP, not historical because I haven't gotten into that, but my friends want me to. But like immersive, get yourself into the situation. Forget that you're even playing airsoft because of the situation that's presented to you is like the most fun thing to me now.
Yeah.
To the point where I honestly am not interested in most events because I think it's just going to be a big skirmish. I want the event that I go to have a meaning to it, have a story, give me a reason to be there, make me forget that I'm playing airsoft, and just give me an experience, like scare me in the middle of the night,
So
like
you,
Yeah.
sneak up on me. Like,
so you're here for sort of, to use the RPG thing. You're here for the immersion. You're here for the story. You've gone from being the D&D player who's like, yeah, I want to just roll dice, kill goblins, combat, to
Yeah.
the D&D player who's like, no, I'm here for a deep narrative.
oh, 100%. It's weird to think because I never thought I'd be in this situation, right? And with the amount of gear that I have and the guns that I've built and, all of the experience that I've had. And now as you know, I have night vision and I only talk about night vision all the time. Like you'd think I'm just a tryhard. And like, while me and my group do try to play the game well, we really just want a narrative. Like
Yeah.
we want
I
a
have good
reason
news.
to feel like we're there.
I have good news. Mostly, I think that you're a nerd about something cool, which is
Yeah.
which
I
means
mean,
you're in
like-
really good or really bad company. Like,
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I some people used to say like airsoft is LARPing, and I think some airsoft is LARPing. I think that there is airsoft that is purely just for the sport. Speedsoft being an example of that.
Yeah.
CQB being an example of
I
that.
think if you are wearing camo to your airsoft game and you don't need to be wearing camo, you are LARPing. And that's a lot of airsoft games. But
Yeah, no,
I
I mean,
also know people will be annoyed by that sentence. Like,
I mean, I don't know. At this point, I think once I accepted the fact that I am like, that is what I enjoy about the game, is the acting out, the getting immersed in the situation, the forgetting that the guy that's crossing the road is not actually going to get shot and hurt, right? Like being it so into the situation that you're genuinely afraid to make the next move. That is like what I want. It's almost like you feel like you're in a movie. Like you forget, you suspend that the guy over there is shooting at you with plastic, and instead you feel like you're being hunted.
and I mean,
Or
like,
somebody is where they're not supposed to be.
and I
You
mean,
know,
like, part of the appeal for me, like, to going and just playing a frontline on a Saturday is definitely still, like, I'm not stressed about getting shot with an airsoft gun, but occasionally to my detriment. But like, I'm there for the adrenaline. I'm there for, like, a BB zipping by my head and my brain going,
Yeah. I think, it's interesting because what you're talking about, Jordan, I mean, it's just airsoft is the medium, right? It's not the end goal. The goal is the other thing. And when you're doing speed soft or you're doing like quick skirmishes or whatever, then yeah, of course it's, like you're slinging plastic, and that can certainly be fun. Like, don't get me wrong. But I think I would agree. Like, I think when you're in the moment, like whether it's a 40-hour milsim, which I have not experienced yet,
I like that yet.
wink.
That was off. That was aside. Nobody heard that.
Sure.
I think you're in situations where you have challenges or you have problems, and by problem I mean like a puzzle, right? Where you have to use your brain and think about, what are the resources at my disposal? Who do I have with me? What is the situation there? How do we crack this nut, basically, right? How do we solve this problem? And it's in that moment, it's not really about airsoft. Airsoft is the vehicle, but like, it's about, okay, how are we going to use what we've got? Like, we've got these, like these grenades that we have now. We've got the throwables, we got the launchables, we have a team. Okay, so we have all these resources at our disposal. How are we going to use that to take control of the village? How are we going to use that to our advantage? And I think those are the moments where now, I'm more leaning into that. It's sort of that challenge of learning. It's almost relearning in a way, especially given that at our field, like, if you make mistakes, like, you pay for it immediately, right? There's no like, oh, okay, that didn't go quite the way you wanted to. It's like, you get blasted, like, that's it, because the field is so small. So it's almost a relearning of trying to figure all that stuff out. Like, what's the flow? What does that look like with everyone around? And that's something that I can say is pretty new. Like I don't remember feeling like that in the past. And maybe that's just as well, as I think about you, Jordan, and your sort of your growth and your experience, like coming into your own in terms of your own skills and abilities. Like when you're just learning, right? It's easier to fall into this idea of like, oh, I got to go practice. I got to work on my skill. You don't I got nothing to practice right now. You've done like 50 million ready ups by now. Like those skills, it's sort of like I was saying in the intro, like things that you used to be concerned about, they're just a footnote now. So now your attention can go to other stuff like the story, the immersion, the being woken up in the middle of the night, or knowing that there's guys out there with nods and you don't have them, and you're like, okay, I know they're there, but I can't see them, and now I'm getting scared. Like those moments, like creating those. It's not really immersive gameplay. It's just like that's the actual game. The game Airsoft is not the game. The game is all the rest of it.
Yeah, I mean, part
Go
of
ahead,
that,
Pat.
I guess, comes from, and like for Phil and I as well, the pop from ready to up pull trigger portion of the exercise is fairly autonomic at this point. Like it, you know, and so that means we have space to not stress about that and instead go, okay, so we have 6 grenades. How do we make the best use of that? Who should have those? What does the fact that, grenades are cheaper now and the other team also has them do to play? Like,
But when we played at Iron Horse and we were you guys were having dinner, and then myself and like Sam and Steve and stuff were in that building right on the western side of the field, and the other team was coming in and throwing grenades like left, right, and center, and everything's going off around me. And in a brief moment, I just completely forgot where I was, and I was genuinely like terrified, right? Like, oh my god, what the hell is going? You cannot get that experience, outside of, well, going to look for it, right? Like in a game of Airsoft, right? And that I definitely would agree. Like those are the kinds of things that make this so unique. Now, that, let's be clear, I don't like being scared. I don't go look for that in my regular. Some people like being spooked, and that's fine. That's not me. But like for sure, it's a unique part of what this hobby can deliver for a lot of people, right?
Well, and I think that it's a combination of a bunch of things, right? It puts you into, I guess a good way to describe this is Airsoft, depending on the event, can put you into situations that otherwise you would never be in. I would never. I mean, prior to this, like I wasn't planning on going out and for 2 days, like just living only out of my backpack, like having to bring out enough water and food. Like that was never like a thing that I wanted to do.
and like
And it was
while
also
doing stuff that's, more physically demanding than like just hiking
100%.
too, right?
Like it's not just like you're going for an easy hike. Like you're running, you're jumping, you're crouching, you're crawling. All the while you've slept for 2 hours the night before, and you are now up on like hour 14 of that day, and it's getting really bad. The part of the events that I enjoy, and I'll reference it just directly. Gordon from Stag Ops running Midsummer Nightmare. He tells you in the beginning, this event is made to stress you psychologically, physically, and mentally. It's all part of the experience. You will be sleep deprived. That's part of the experience. You will be tired. You'll probably be more tired than you ever have been. And that is like part of it. Will you push through that, or will you feel like you have to give up? And the way that those events are, it was never felt like I'm going to give up situation. Like it was always, I must do this. This is why I'm here. And, I've had some of the scariest and most successful and most awful times of my life at those events. And all of them, you come out on the other side. And it's like, I am so glad that I did that. I would never, ever take that back. And it's with your friends. It's with all your boys. And, you come in, sometimes you don't know somebody too well. You're going to know them damn well after you're done that event. And you've been putting up with them for, in the dark, listening to their ramblings, or people going crazy, not being prepared. Like you get to know people real quick when you are in situations like that, and you grow together. It's amazing. I love it.
And it's really at like the outer edge of like a niche hobby, right? Because you think about the average airsofter will probably never take their airsoft experience all the way to that level, right? And in fact, I would dare to say the average human, right, or at least North American, is probably never going to be sort of that sleep deprived, that tired, that fatigued. So for many people who are doing these events, like that's maybe the first time or one of the very few times that they've done that, right? And again, like that airsoft is just a vehicle for that type of experience. Now, if that doesn't sound fun to someone, that's a different conversation, right? Like
Don't
someone
go to those events.
well, and I mean,
100%.
like someone like Matt, right, from California, who this was his job for, 2 tours, I believe, and all this kind of stuff. He may not have any interest in reliving that sort of experience, and that's totally legit, right? I'm not suggesting anyone should, but I think coming back to the topic sort of how the fun has evolved for us, I wonder if 2001 Jordan would ever think that is what he would be looking for from airsoft. You know what I mean?
Well, I will say that early on I was exposed to this. The first Midsummer Nightmare that I went to after I met Matt and Will, who were two of the original pairs. It was like 3 months after I started playing airsoft. I went to my first ever Midsummer Nightmare, and I was not prepared for that at all. Absolutely not. In fact, I had gone to like one milsim before that, which was like a local field milsim, which was my first time even sleeping outside ever. I had never camped.
Oh,
Or
wow.
as somebody who remembered it, I never camped. Like I might have gone when I was a very young child with my parents, but I
That
had
is a
never
big
done
jump.
it. Oh, 100%. It was the first time that I had ever slept outside. It was the first time I had ever like set up a tent. That was on the hillside at Feel Good Farms, was my first ever op, and then Midsummer Nightmare was like my second ever milsim op, and realistically my first one, because Feel Good Farms was like a good introduction, but it wasn't. It was more like a skirmish with sleeping over at the field, like in the field involved.
Mhm.
So it was. I remember when I first showed up, Gordon said, "For any of you who decided to pick this as your first milsim event ever, I don't think that was the smartest decision." Like he said that to me, and I'm sitting there like, I think I'm prepared. I got all my stuff. I got my gear on, and I'm like, did I make a mistake coming here? Like, am I gonna like die or get hurt here? Like, you 100% could walk off a cliff in the middle of the night. Like there
Welcome,
are
welcome.
drops.
Respectfully, you are doomed. What?
That is essentially how I felt. And it was like just I was exposed super early to it, and I knew like there was a position where it changed from just the gear I was wearing to the experience that I want. That I knew I was going to be a milsim player, and I knew that was the type of game that I would enjoy. But did I ever think that I would want to be at what is essentially a LARP event with airsoft? No, I never thought about that. I always thought I was going to be, just playing the game to be competitive, to play with friends, making friends so that we can do well on the field. Now, dude, I want to get out there when it's a horrible day, bad weather, we're all stressed out, maybe somebody ran out of food, and we still got to push through the game. Like that's
Mhm.
the experience for me now. Don't let anybody fail. You all stay together, and it sucks, but you embrace the suck, as a lot of people will say in
Like,
those
Yeah.
situations.
it's cool that for you it's become sort of a like, man, I love the way that this sucks, kind of thing. And it's funny because like I actually have always been one of the players who's like, yeah, it's raining. I actually like playing yourself in the rain. That's fine. Like,
Mm-hmm.
um, the more time has gone on, the more it's like, oh, it's snowing. Let's play. No, no. But like rain, yeah, whatever. As long as I can stay, like, as long as I have gear for rain, which I do, no problem. Playing in the fog here is like my favorite kind of airsoft. Partly because apparently I should play Silent Hill. I don't know. But I find it very atmospheric.
I think one of the big changes for sort of my experience with airsoft has definitely been leaning into, especially what's been going on for the last several years in terms of organizing events and trying to create those experiences for players. I think, even from early days, like we tried to organize games, but we had no idea what we were doing, and the community was relatively small, and we did the best that we could. And I mean, there's one game in particular that Pat organized. Oh geez, Operation Asgardian Chill, I think,
Yep, that was pretty good.
where it
Like
was
that
like
actually was pretty solid. I think that sort of worked.
was a solid op, and like I think we've done a couple, but like now spending a lot of time, a lot of creative time now thinking about the exact thing that you're talking about. How do we use airsoft as a vehicle to get players to experience something that they've never experienced before? So like at the last game, having NPCs who they actually have to talk to, and the NPCs will get in their face or not, or whatever. Like getting players to think differently has been really a big part of how airsoft has changed and how my perspective. And in that context, like a fun day of airsoft for me no longer involves necessarily shooting. In fact, I think I could probably have a great time at a game without shooting my blaster even one time, right? As long as the people around us are having fun and that you're putting problems in front of me that I'm trying to solve, whether as a game organizer or whether as a player, right? Like it's that feeling of like, hey, I did something cool and someone else had a good time as a consequence of that too, is a really integral feeling to what the fun that I extract out of airsoft now, right? It's no longer just about going to the field and like shooting some plastic and showing people how good I am, TM, because it's like not at all the case. And I think about our local, and I think about how many players would absolutely rock me all the time, right? And it's not about that. And I mean, because I think it's a survival instinct too, because if it was about that, I'd be depressed all the time, right? Like it just would not work.
But I mean, like, finding new ways to have fun with this is kind of thing, right? I mean, I built an LMG 249 because I wanted to, right? Like, because the tech aspect of this, which is definitely not a thing I thought would be like a thing I got into ever, right? When I started playing, it's like, yeah, and you're gonna love it. No, that would be weird. And now I'm like, yeah, I like tinkering with these and trying to make them work and not explode.
And your friendly neighborhood game organizer gave you your 249 a reason to exist in the context of our community.
I mean, that's certainly helpful. I'm not convinced I wouldn't have done the daft thing anyway. Mm-hmm. But like, yeah, the fact that it has a practical use in scenarios is definitely a like, oh, that's very cool. We like that.
Did you guys restrict to semi-auto now?
For the games and stuff, yeah. So we have the SSW category. So
cool.
There's a couple people in town who have them, not just Pat. I mean, it's again, like it's about providing players a different experience. It's part of the reason why we did that, so that the people who had the SSWs could experience using them in the context where they're actually meaningful, and then the people who don't have them can experience what that's like to be on the receiving end, or if they're on your teammate, right? Like what it's like to have to rely on someone else to give you automatic fire, right?
The game is completely different when not everybody can full auto.
Mm-hmm.
And this comes as somebody who has LMGs and multiple of them and was a support gunner for the majority of the time, and now I'm kind of over it. I'll still do it because I know that I can, and sometimes we need it because it's very important, especially in milsim events. But being on the receiving end of a good LMG gunner, or even just an LMG gunner with a good gun, it is very, very difficult to deal with. And it is totally different than when everybody is an LMG gunner or can be an LMG gunner at any given point just by flipping a switch. Those games, in my opinion, are kind of stale. It really sucks when somebody with a PDW with a 1500 round drum mag can just full auto their 10-inch gun around a corner and there's nothing you can do about it. Like, it's like they're shooting an LMG, but it's not super long or heavy or cumbersome or comes with the LMG tax of bad magazines and having to fix it all the time. Like, that's like part of the game and part of the challenge, and you get the reward by,
ladies and gentlemen, the two LMG gunners nodding at one another going, yeah, I like how this sucks.
Yeah, it does suck. LMG gunning is fun when you are in a good position for it. If you are not, it sucks. It really sucks. You can walk around forever carrying a super heavy gun, cumbersome, and then engagement starts and you die first and you don't even get to use it. Or conversely, you can do what happened to me at Midsummer and be out there with your first time using a new box mag that you tested and it worked, and then you get into a firefight at nighttime when you're trying to assault a position and your box mag goes down. So you're dealing with it in the dark while your friends are dying around you and you're shooting. And you're like, okay, I'm going to get it to work. Ripping apart your box mag in the dark, trying to fix it.
And no profanity was said that night.
No, absolutely not. And I got it back together. And then all of a sudden I had LMG night vision power. And I just completely took back over the situation. Like, there's super high times and super low times of LMG. But, with a rifleman, you're kind of always in the same type of time. I'd like to say that my rifles are a lot more reliable. They don't have the pain of box mag break that
Yeah.
that LMGs do. But there's something satisfying about being able to use that different class of weapon and get the advantages of it, and also the inherent disadvantages that come with carrying it around and using it.
Totally.
Do you find like over the years, like your sort of your ability to recover from crappy situations that occur on the field has also changed? Like you talk about this box mag situation, which like that sucks, right? That's not type 2 fun. Like that's type 3, type 4, type 5 fun, type 5 fun. Like it's a bad situation. There've been games where Pat, same sort of situation, showed up with his LMG, we're ready to go, and it just doesn't work, right? Which is like what you're saying is the LMG tax. That's how it works. Fair enough. But like there have also been games where I know like Pat's had a crappy time or I've had a crappy time, and I'm like, that's it. I'm done. Right. What are, over the years, and especially like looking now, what are some of the things that sort of keep you in even when things aren't going the way you want to?
Honestly, the only thing that really keeps me in when things aren't going the way I want is having my friends there. There's been many times where, especially now when I'm not as committed to getting out and playing every weekend for like a skirmish, like I look at it as a big time sink now. I leave at 7 o'clock in the morning, if not earlier. I get back home after 5. It's already dark. It's a Sunday. I have work the next day. I don't get any time to relax. By the time you get home and sit down, it's 8 o'clock. And then you've used your whole day. So the only thing that really keeps me at the field if everything's going wrong is if I have friends there. That's really it. The other, maybe a month and a half ago or so, I went to the field. I was playing the game. One of the screws stripped out on one of the guns that I had, and my handguard was wobbling all over the place. And I'm like, I could leave right now and be back home for 1 o'clock. I'm gonna leave,
Yeah.
and I just did. I wasn't like I'm gonna power through this or whatever. I was like, no, I'm gonna cut my losses and just go home.
Like sometimes that's the right play. Like
Yeah.
there is a point where it's like, you know what, not today.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
I guess my point is to say like over the years, like I think, you sort of figure out that arithmetic and you for yourself, right? And like what you're willing to handle, and also like the situation that you're in, whether you continue, and like that could also not be with respect to you, but other players too, because I think we have all played airsoft at times where the vibes weren't necessarily immaculate, let's call it, right? Like people are, Jordan, you're talking about people having fights. I can say we've never had that particular thing happen here, but I mean, we have a community of like 40 people, so like whatever. But like, what keeps you coming back to airsoft when you have those kinds of situations, or what like obviously like it's fun, but like that's a pretty big damper, right?
100%. There's a mental aspect of my airsoft burnout, which I've talked a bit about. Pat likes working on guns. I work on guns out of necessity. I don't like it. I can do it and I'm fine at it, but I don't enjoy it. Every time I work on a gun, it adds like plus 30 to my airsoft burnout. And if I'm going to play twice this month, I'll maybe play once, if that. Like if I don't want to do it. So I mean, realistically, the thing that keeps me back is I'm always chasing that experience that I had when I first started again. And really, the only way I've been able to do that, I've only been able to do that a couple of times. One was going to my first ever like real immersive event, and subsequent immersive events that we had like awesome situations. That drives me to keep wanting to go back to those. The ones that want, what makes me keep going back to like regular plays, that even though I'm not going to them as much, is to get that excitement that I had back when I first started playing, like doing something new, doing something real cool, meeting new people. That's a huge thing for me. A lot of the guys in my group called me the influencer because I'm always talking, or previously I was posting on social media all the time. Like I know a lot of the people in the community in my area now, and a lot of people know of us. And, it's the social aspect of airsoft is bigger than airsoft for me a lot right now. If it's not a Milsim event, it's a skirmish team, and I really just want to be there to talk to people and hang out with them. Like, this is just a way for me to hang out with my friends. It's an excuse for me to hang out with my friends, doing an activity that we all enjoy and that we all can agree on to go do.
Well,
Yeah.
and like the fact that it's a thing where, like the more I feel like people exist as working adults, the more it's like, okay, so if I want to see like Phil and John and Cal and everyone in the same place, I either have to organize going out for food with the airsoft team or I have to go play airsoft. I like both of those things. let's go play airsoft.
Yeah. I think too, like for us, as you know, we're in a pretty unique position as well, um, in that the team is very influential and instrumental in the development of the community, right? And so us going to games is, you know, is fine and stuff, but it's also about building those connections that you're talking about in terms of influencing. And I'm not trying to toot our own horn here. It's not at all the intent, but it's like if we go and we talk to people and we encourage people and we tell them about games that we have coming up or things that we have planned, like that helps bolster the community in a way, right? Because it gives people something to look forward to. It shows them sort of as you know, like this is something you can do. Like you can create your own team. You can roll with people you know. This is what you can sort of you can use as a not a template surely, but like as an example, right? To say, well, these are the things that I want to do. And so just looking at last year, we have two big teams that have formed in town, and so they're you know they're coming to games and they're playing you know over the winter, which is great. But I think a big part of that for us, that's something that I don't think I would have foreseen back in 2006. It's like, oh, well, a big part of you playing airsoft is also going to be making sure that other people keep playing airsoft too, right?
Having fun with the community.
Yeah, for sure.
100%. I mean, so like I Discord interactions, internet interactions are interesting sometimes. I'd like to think that the majority of the time I'm interacting with people on the Discord, I'm being helpful. Sometimes I come across pretty blunt, and I'd like to give my opinion on. I like to give my opinion on things that I've either experienced myself or I found don't work. Maybe I give advice when I shouldn't sometimes. But there are a lot of people in this community that when they first got in, I see a lot of what I was when I first started playing. And I had a million questions. And some people are afraid to ask those questions, or they think they're being annoying by asking those questions all the time. And, you know, speaking of like some most recently, I mean, what we had Huck, that's now the airsoft extraordinaire, going off and playing airsoft in all these different places. I mean, she just started playing the game. Like she just started, and she had a ton of questions, and she was able to get a lot of that information from the community and the community members and everybody that's here. You know, to Pat's point, like airsoft itself, like it is an easy medium for people that enjoy it to meet up and talk about it. It's kind of like going to a convention for a very niche thing. You go there and you see a bunch of people that all like this niche thing, and now you can talk about it like it's not niche anymore.
Well, and like,
yeah.
you
it's
know,
not weird.
We're all here to like. Guaranteed, we are all here to see each other's cool, weird airsoft guns. Like,
yeah.
Yeah, that I mean, that's part of the game now. Like when people get new guns, it's like you got to show your friends. You got to post pictures online. Like next time you see them in person, man, can I hold that gun? Like, can I feel it? Like, let me see it. Let me run it for a round. Like it's like all part of it. Like I get a new toy, the first thing I do is I show my friends. That's what I want to do. Like it's a, I don't know. When you get older, I remember people used to say like, you know, you never really grow up, your toys just get more expensive. That is like 100% the case that I found now as an adult.
I'm just gonna
everything
not look
is just
at
more
the
expensive.
Warhammer behind me.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I don't even want to start talking about the stuff that I bought. But it's, I mean, I already have talked about a lot of it. But it's
welcome to Team 4 Life Choices.
it's so nice. I've talked about this a little bit. I talked to Phil about this earlier. When you are in a community that is a niche community, you forget how niche it really is. Airsoft itself, honestly, is a pretty small thing when you compare it to other sports or other actions like biking or cycling, you know, running, like all of those things. Like people that play paintball, I feel like paintball is much, or at least in the past, it was much more popular than airsoft was, because it was more as like a sport, like it was a televised thing. Airsoft, when you are in a group of people, you forget that it's, you know, some people think it's weird or it's not normal or it's a weird hobby that you have. The same thing as night vision. I forget that not everybody has freaking night vision in the world. And it's really bad because you get into a community where it's like, look at all these guns, and you get like a disproportionate view of like, man, look at how many people have LMGs, or look at all that tactical gear, when the majority of the people that show up at fields don't have anything. They show up and they rent. They show up with a sweatshirt and pocket magazines, and like that's it. It's really good that it's good and bad that we have a community like this, because we're all good and bad influences on each other at any given point, I think.
Totally.
Pat is now being coaxed into buying an M240. Pat, I'm not even going to give you an opinion on that because I think you already want it bad enough, so I won't sway you. But like,
while we've been recording, I had a message pop up on the Stormfighters that was someone being like,
Hey, did you buy that
Yeah.
240 yet? Yeah, no, it's
the
so,
community is helping.
I mean, at the end of the day, you know, the community is a huge part of it. I wouldn't even be playing with my friends if it wasn't for the airsoft community that's in my area.
Mhm.
You know, granted, I went out of my way to be social and talk to people because I like doing that, and that's how I met everybody. But if I had the community that you guys do, and it was like the nearest field was 4 hours away, and if I went, there was like 10 people some days, like I mean, I definitely would not be in the same situation as I am right now. I was
Yeah.
lucky to have things nearby, and have a welcoming community that a lot of them are now my best friends ever, like people that I would do anything with and anything for all the time that I met through this. Niche hobbies, I think, are just so good and bad all at the same time.
And I think, like you mentioned like night vision, and we don't have to get into it because we talk about it all the time, but like the reality is like there's niche parts of our niche hobby as well, right? And like you talked about this Midsummer Nightmare, which is a super niche part of airsoft, because like we were saying, like many people won't do that, and what the fun looks like for everyone is going to be different, and what drives them is going to be different to go there. You talked about people playing in a sweater. They're having a great time, right? Like we play
Mm-hmm.
with renters all the time who are just having an amazing time just being there. They're getting that adrenaline, that sense of like, oh my god, I'm like an action hero in this movie or whatever. And then you have players like myself who've been playing for a really long time, and like you don't get that sense anymore because it's not like you've done it so much, you know the ropes. That's not what that's about. But you're still having fun most of the time. You're still having fun, right? Like you're still problem solving. You're trying. But I also will say there's lots and lots of games that I play, especially at Frontline, where honestly, like the game starts and I'm just like, whatever, man. Like
Yeah, yeah,
I
100%.
I'm going through the motions and I know exactly, okay, so I'm on fish tubs. I'm going to go right. I'm going to take the corner. I'm going to wait. I'm going to hold. Two guys are going to run across. I'm going to shoot at them. I'm going to wait for a break, and then I'm going to move to the next building. I'm going to take the corner. I'm going to see there's not going to be anybody there. I'm going to get behind the car. I'm going to get behind the two-story, go inside. And like I can just do this over and over and over, and like at some point you're like, okay, well this is not fun. This is just doing that so that eventually I can do the other thing where the ref says, okay, we're doing a full field game. Like, all right, let's go. Right?
Well, and at that point, Phil, it's like you need something to break the mold. You need something to change up your experience. Why
Yeah.
don't you do that? But instead of having all your magazines, you can shoot as much as you want. Now you got one mag. Now you
Yeah.
got
Or
now you
wear an
got 30 round
FLC, which is
magazine.
like
Or
dangling
now,
all over.
now you're using an AK with no optic and a Chicom. Like
Yeah,
like
exactly.
switch it up. Like variety is like the flavor of like what keeps me playing the game now. I wasn't playing a lot this year. Then I got a gas blowback M4.
Mhm.
Now I want to play the game again. Like that, I get new toys. I want to go use them. I play until I have fun, and then I'm like, oh yeah, airsoft is fun. I'm gonna take a break now for a month, and then go back out. I almost think of it as like a resource. You burn yourself out in airsoft, which I've talked about before, and I think we've all burned ourselves out on airsoft before in various hobbies, right?
Mhm.
I have a guy in my one of my best friends, Jeff, who's been playing airsoft since like 2003, or probably even earlier than that, and he's taken like 3 or 4 breaks of multiple years at a time where he hasn't played the game just because it's getting old.
Yeah.
And there has to be something to freshen it up, and I feel like the only reason that I'm still enjoying it the way that I am is because of the friends that I have that play the game, of all the people that I met. If I didn't meet them, I probably would have all my gear and just not play. It would be
Well,
lame.
and I think it comes back to what you were saying. It's about airsoft is not the mean. The airsoft is the means to the end. It's not the end in itself, right? And so if I'm playing, I'm just describing that village game that I just talked about. Like that that is not a new experience. That is not an engaging experience. So to your point, like you have to change it to make it engaging, or you just don't do it, and that's fine too. But like I think that really has been the big shift in my perspective for airsoft. And I think what we've been talking about is how do we get those experiences from the game and not hyper focus on, well, airsoft is airsoft. It's like, yeah, but really it's more about what am I getting out of this? And that aspect of fun has definitely shifted from, slaying plastic or learning how to shoot offside or doing ready ups to problem solving, right? And making sure that everyone has a good attitude. I think that's a different conversation, but like, making sure everyone's having a good time is super, super important to me too. I think, that's fun.
There are a ton of opportunities to to take airsoft and go, okay, so like I have this cool thing that I do and I want to make my own fun with it. Right? You know, whether that's, you know, yes, I'm crazy building a new gun for the fun of it, or, you know, like one of the appeals definitely to having the LMG is, hey, if I feel like I've run the M27 enough, I can run this one. Right? You know, I would like to build an AAP because, again, blame the Discord. Actually, you guys are just a bad influence.
Yes,
you know,
bad influence.
But like, build an AAP, run that on HPA. Yeah, that will be a different gameplay experience than my big, heavy either other gun. You know, it's about trying new stuff and trying to find new ways to have fun with it. You know, ideally consistently, like innovate as we go, kind of thing.
So, I guess my last question, Jordan. I mean, it's been 4 years. Where do you see yourself with Airsoft in 4 years now? Now, you looking in your magic 8 ball.
Man, I don't even
As
want to
ask
think
again
about
later.
that.
Is that what it's saying?
I don't even want to think about that, man. I've been through so many different phases of it already. I feel like I've kind of speed run Airsoft compared to like a lot of people.
Not compared to Huck though. She's
No, well,
the definition of speed run.
Yeah, well, we should ask her that question in 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah. Where do you think you'll be in 4 years with it? She's on a different level. But what do I think, man? I mean, I've been a rifleman. I've been an LMG gunner. I've been in all these different types of events. I've gone through the heartbreak of building a gun and having it break on you as soon as you get out to the field. Now I'm on gas blowbacks. That's what I'm using now, and I'm going back to building sustainment kits for like 24 to 36 hours that just are just on me. Honestly, Phil, I'm afraid to think of where I'm going to be in 4 years, because either I'm going to have spent way too much money buying other things, knowing my current status, or I won't be playing the game anymore. And I really hate to think of a future that is the case. I know that, you know, not everything stays around forever. I think the people that have been playing Airsoft for as long as you guys have that are still enjoying it, that's amazing. It's very difficult to stick with a hobby for that long, because things change. You know, the game itself has changed a lot since you guys started.
But like, in a lot of ways,
the technology.
In a lot of ways, that's to me like one of the cool things, right? You know, I like looking at where we are right now. Right, literally, Phil is fidgeting with grenades we are excited to play with.
Yeah,
in the new season. That, you know, like no aspect of how those function is like identical to the ones I used 6 years ago.
Oh yeah,
and
100%.
The degree to which just new versions of stuff can make a cool, different thing. Like, hey, these are grenades that don't take 5 minutes to reload. Intriguing. Cool. Tell me more.
Yeah, we have the technology. No, you know, that's a very good point, Pat. I think that a lot of what keeps me interested now is the new stuff, the new things that I can use. Is it new night vision? Is it a new, like, something different with my gear? Is it getting something that I feel like will elevate the experience? Something that I haven't talked about forever on the podcast, at least. There's a sound unit that attaches to the underneath of like your gun that looks like an M203 launcher that is propane powered. It's called the RDX like Boss. It's like a sound unit.
Yeah, Jono from Special Effects in New Zealand was here talking about us. Yeah.
And that is so cool, man. Like I look at that and I'm like, wow, that elevates my experience and the people that I'm shooting at. Like that elevates a ton of the game. Right now, I'm just looking for new ways to enjoy the game, and as long as I can keep finding new ways, I don't think I'm ever going to get bored with it. As much as, you know, it might feel like I'm not playing as much, I feel like I'll always kind of have that interest. It's not something that's just going to go away. Some of the best friends I've ever made are because of Airsoft and because of the Airsoft that I played. I just hope that Airsoft keeps getting better. Hopefully there's still new cool toys in the future. You know, hopefully it doesn't get stale.
Yeah.
I have a feeling that Airsoft is kind of, you know, we had a boom when COVID happened and lots of new stuff was happening and lots of new people were coming into the sport. That's like the main thing. Like we need new players to come in. We need people to enjoy the game. We need new things to come to keep the old players here so they can keep playing the game and enjoying it, you know?
And like the cool thing from my experience, or a cool thing from my experience there, is like, it's not a fad, right? You know, like we had a huge boom in sort of like 2012,
13 2000,
in there. Where just, you know, for a summer, Airsoft was the thing for like everyone, right?
Mhm.
16-year-olds, whatever. And it was like, oh man, there's a ton of people. And then some of them stayed and some of them wandered off. And I think it's a persistently cool sport, but I think it also is a sport at this point that has enough maturity that having people who are like, yeah, I've done a bunch of stuff, here are cool things we can do, is really valuable.
I think the big thing for me over the next, 4 years and beyond is really going to be around what does event organizing look like? Because I think, with some of the partnerships that I'm hoping to build this year and sort of in the future, like if we get in a situation where we can organize games that are like legit, right? That like people have said to me on the Discord, it's like, I'd love to come to Newfoundland and play Airsoft with you. And I'd be like, I would love to have you come here.
I wonder who said that. Who would ever say that?
Well, several people, not just you.
Yeah.
But like, I would love to have you come here, but that can't be the only reason you come, because Airsoft is much better elsewhere, right? And I'm not crapping on our community, but if you live somewhere like Todd lives in South Carolina, where he has 8 fields in a 2-hour driving distance, the quality that he's able to get is going to be much better than what he can get here. And that's not knocking at anyone. That's just a statement of fact.
It's also just like the cost of traveling here is
exactly
prohibitive,
right?
as well. So like you have the simultaneous, like I think our Airsoft community is a really good Airsoft community.
I agree.
I also know that it's a comparatively small and like, compared to some places, poorly funded, and like not in a, the field isn't good or doesn't put in money kind of way, just in a, there are places where they have just 200 players. Oh yeah, that's going to change things.
Yeah, and so this is where my mind was at. Like, if in a few years we're able to say, hey, we're hosting like a 24 to 36 hour milsim at the training facility from the Canadian Forces, and this is what we're doing, and we're running it, and all this kind of stuff. Like, that's the kind of event that I'm like, all right, if you're going to travel to Newfoundland to play Airsoft, that's what you have to do, right? And so I don't think that's outside of the realm of the possibility, but the realm of the possible. But it is certainly, I would say, a stretch goal. I think in the next 4 years. But I think that's really where I think my Airsoft enjoyment is eventually going to lead me, because I would love to be like playing these kinds of events and running a squad and learning how to do all that cool stuff, because I think that would be a lot of fun. The reality is that there's nobody who's going to organize these games for me here. Like, that's not going to happen. Like, I'm going to need to be involved in some way, shape, or form. And that's not because the guys won't run them for me. Like, that's not the thing. I'm sure Pat and Kirby would be, they might even be planning to run one right now. I don't know. But the reality is, like, it's a lot of my involvement that made these things possible historically. So I'm going to be there too. So I'm going to have to find a way to make sure that I can keep getting that enjoyment. But I think, that's to answer my question for myself. That's where I'm looking at it too. And hopefully doing a lot more traveling to play Airsoft, because doing that last year was opening really a floodgate for us, and realizing that this is something that we can actually do, that is feasible. And that never would have been possible without the community that we have on the Discord either, right? Like, full stop.
I mean, and that's a very good point. After I flew for the first time with Airsoft gear and guns, I'm like, oh wow, I can do this. This isn't so mysterious and scary anymore, that like my guns are going to get taken away and I'm not going to be able to get on the plane, and like all of these things. Like, now that I've done it, I want to do it more, and I know that I can. So it opens up like Matt wants me to go to California and go play with him over there. Like, there's, games in Texas that are happening where there might be people showing up to. Like, there's places that I wanted to go to that it's been like, man, flying would be a big pain in the butt because I don't have the stuff to do it. But like you said, once you have opened that gate and you know how to do it, and you know that it works, and you know that it's a possibility, like, that's kind of what I'm looking at now. Like, what can we travel to this year? Like, what
you're planning on hitting every single AMS and holding one position for 2.5 hours at every single AMS game?
No,
come on, that would be a hell of an achievement, though. You got to admit.
Yeah, and then I would never play the game again if I did that. Like, if you catch me flying all over the United States to play at AMS games, like, I love AMS games because I get to meet you guys there, right? Like, I love AMS games because I get to go meet with my friends or meet new people and whatever. Sorry, my cat just moved my microphone. But AMS games are an Airsoft game. A lot of them turn into like a skirmish type game, and honestly, those are not the most interesting to me. The only reason that I even wanted to go to Iron Horse is because my friends wanted to go, and I wanted to meet you guys. And that was it. I could have met you guys literally anywhere else, and I would have had just as much fun and spent a lot less money. It wouldn't
Yeah.
it wouldn't have bothered me at all. I'm glad that we got to play at Iron Horse. I'm glad that we got to play at that location, but I'm not killing myself to be like, I need to go back to the Guardian Center again. I really don't care. I could come play with you guys and have a great time. I could, you guys could come here in New Hampshire and play, and we'd have a great time. As long as I'm meeting some people and I'm having a good time with them, that's like the most important part. And traveling is a big part of that. And like you said, without the community, man, look at how many people we had show up down there.
Yeah,
we had people from literally the upside down in our squad. That is amazing and scary all at once.
Just too cool. Like,
yeah. Well, boys, thanks for coming on. It's a great conversation. I am excited to see where we end up in the next 4 years. We'll be talking throughout, and I'm sure we could do this episode every year talking about how Airsoft has changed for us in the last year, but it's just great to catch up and have this conversation. I think it was a good one. I had a lot of fun.
Thank you guys. It was super fun.
Thank you guys for having. It's always a pleasure.
And thank you guys for listening. That's all we've got for you this week. We'll talk to you next week. Take care.
Cheers.